ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday Atma Vicharam, the Satsang, usually by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham and meditating upon it. And we have been reading Bhagavan's Upadesham from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry, 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the questions and answers given by Bhagavan on the subject matter of Atma Vichara or self-inquiry. This compilation has been done by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. And after meditating on the question and answer, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Following that, our president Sharda Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita, a compilation of all the question and answers put to Bhagavan in Sanskrit by Ganapati Muni. And then finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. We will continue to meditate on the last week's question answer. I will repeat the question and the answer. Devotee asks, this is the 77th question in the segment 1936 to 1950 of the book. And the 77th question is, the devotee asks, is it enough if I spend some time in the morning and some time in the evening for this self-enquiry? Or should I do it always, say even when I am writing or walking? So the questioner here is asking, as a sadhaka, that I understand self-enquiry is very important way for the realization. So should I go about doing this in a stipulated time in the morning or evening, or should it go on like an undercurrent in all my activities? So the Bhagavan gives two answers, I would say. The answer has been put here in two paragraphs. I feel each of these paragraphs have been in a way trying to explain to us what is the difference between knowing and realizing. So we will try to look at that from this perspective. Bhagavan says the first paragraph is more about knowing. Bhagavan says, no one will inquire into the source of thoughts unless thoughts arise. So long as you think I am walking, I am writing, inquire who does it. So I repeat the answer. The first part, which is more about the knowing, or that is when I have not yet realized who I am, and I believe I can know or I can do. So here Bhagavan is saying, no one will inquire into the source of thoughts unless thoughts arise. So long as you think I am walking, I am writing, inquire who does it. Let us look at the second part of the answer as a state of realization of who we are when we know what happens. Bhagavan is saying here, these actions, that means the actions of the walking, the writing, all of that, Bhagavan is saying, these actions will, however, go on when one is firmly established in the self. Does a man always say, I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, every moment of his life? He does not say so, and yet all his actions are going on. A beautiful analogy about what the state of realization would be. Let us look at it again. These actions, that means the actions of I am walking or I am writing, I am doing something, all these will, however, go on when one is firmly established in the self. Does a man always say, I am a man, I am a man, I am a man, every moment of his life? He does not say so, and yet all his actions are going on. Here, Bhagavan, as I said, is clearly saying, how are we approaching the self? Are we trying to approach the self as an object of our recognition, an object of something that we would like to know, or a set of information about the self? In that case, it will always be in the form of a thought. And therefore, in all those cases, we may not feel a sense of having realized what we really are because we have identified ourselves with a thinker, a knower, a doer, a questioner. Therefore, that is trying to hold on to something, some knowledge as an object. And therefore, these questions will keep coming. How long should I do self enquiry? Should I do it in the morning or evening? Is it sufficient? Or should I do it with all the actions? So, the issue with the knowing part of the thing which we can see here is the doubt is endless. No matter how much we know, we may find ourselves to be not knowing fully. That is the part, that is the issue, the fundamental problem that we get into with the knowing of things. And Bhagavan is trying to say that, therefore, whenever we know, we need to get back to the source. Whatever we know objectively, the only remedy is not in the knowing, but the one who knows. Therefore, inquiring to the source. To whom is it appearing? Who am I? Therefore, that is the only remedy because once we are in this realm of knowing something as object, one, if you are attending to one object, there are so many other objects which we may not attempt it. And therefore, there is a possibility of a doubt arising relative to all of them. Or even when I know something, I may know very gross. I may not know every details of some even an object that I know. I may not know every detail of it. Sharda Ka would often say in the self-enquiry workshop, we think we are this body, but how much do we know about ourselves having a heart, having a stomach, having a kidney. We don't experience ourselves as heart, kidney, stomach, a conglomeration of all these things, isn't it? So even though we know, we may not really know or for feel for fact. So that is the problem with knowing. It's absolutely no state where we can say we know everything. In fact, Bhagavan says, Unayar Arivar Arunachala. How can anyone know you? It is impossible. So, therefore, this knowing has a serious limitation. And what is that limitation? It is that we always feel not complete. We always feel we are limited. And therefore, the remedy at all such time is that we need to inquire to whom is this and get back to the source. And in the source, which is the substratum of everything, there alone is the remedy. Now, this Bhagavan says about the knowing, but what happens about a realization? Realization is something I know very factually that I am that. There is no more doubt in me. I have realized that this is what is me. In there, I don't have any doubt. So that is the difference between knowing and realization. I am factually aware that this is what is me, and undoubtedly I am clear about it. Now, in that state, Bhagavan gives an analogy like if I am a man or a woman, I don't go about reiterating myself in every work I do. I am a man, therefore I should do like this, or I am a woman, I should therefore do like this. I don't go about reiterating it. I continue to do knowing that I am a man and knowing that I am a woman when I have identified myself with this body. So, as all activities go on without having to constantly remember, where because the questioner here is asking, should I spend a lot of time? How do I do this self inquiry during writing and reading? Bhagavan is saying, become, realize who you are, then there is no such doubts whether you need to inquire. Because if the person is identified with the body, with the knower and the doer, therefore not with the self. And these questions are arising. When this body is doing something, how do I realize how do I get back to the self? How do I be abiding in the self? The fundamental error is in the wrong identification of oneself. And therefore, Bhagavan is asking us to address the root cause, to realize factually for ourselves what we really are. It is not an objective knowledge, because any objective knowledge, as I said, has a limitation. And therefore, there is some fundamental truth in what we already are. And that Bhagavan wants us to know. And when we know that, he says, all these things one may be engaged, the body might be engaged from morning till evening. One knows one is not that. Like I often keep giving the example, like the clouds come, they stay for such a long, some amount of time, and then they disappear. Nobody is bothered about how long it stood, how long it went away. Likewise, we would not be bothered about what all this body and mind and intellect would all go about doing it. It will all do very well when one is has realized that one is the self. Bhagavan says it is a self which will drive all is driving all of these things. So it will continue to act, and therefore one knows that there is no need for one to get bothered about it. So when one is firmly established or realized who he is, Bhagavan says this all this action will go on without having to worry about it. Bhagavan calls it automatic divine action. So Bhagavan is giving the importance, stressing the need for us to uh, clearly understand the difference between knowing and realizing. The knowing part makes us continuously be engaged in more and more knowing, more and more doing. Whereas the enquiry, the Atma Vichara, is not to know anything, but is to realize who we really are. And it moves our attention from the object. To whom is this? Moves our attention from the object back to the subject. Oh, it is to me. And further, it doesn't let us stay there. It asks us to inquire, who am I then? And takes that I back to the source, wherein there is no object subject division, where there is a clear recognition of one what we are, and that we need to realize, understand is our natural, is our state. And when we understand that to be our natural state, we understand that like the sun, in the light of the sun, how all things happen here on the earth, where sun is directly not really doing anything, but it is yet happening by his light. Likewise, in the awareness of the self, all movements happen, all things, whether the thoughts which rise in the mind, or one action, one does whatever action this body does, all of it happens by the natural grace of the self, and therefore it frees us from associating with all this knowing and doing and getting bewildered by the umpteen number of knowing, umpteen number of doing that happens on a moment to moment basis. We are freed from all of it, and we abide in that one truth in whose light everything happens naturally. And there, in that light, there is no rising and diminishing, there is no increasing or decreasing, there is no differentiation between good and the bad, there is no differentiation at all, in whose light Bhagavan says both knowledge and ignorance shines equally. And that is what we realize to be ourselves. And that is the true freedom, because that is the Sahaja freedom that is there, and that is what is our state. And for that, Bhagavan has given us Atma Vichara as the weapon or as the means. Whenever we are getting carried away in the objective knowing and doing, he asks us, he alerts us through the enquiry. He asks us to turn our attention back to the seer, the I, and he further asks us to inquire, who am I? And takes the I back to the source, where there is absolutely no divisions, no rising and falling. And by repeatedly doing that, Bhagavan assures that that factual recognition will come about in time by repeated practice. And therefore, Bhagavan asks us to repeatedly inquire whenever a thought rises, to whom is this, who am I? Which is what we are going to do with His abundant grace for the next 20 minutes.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. With the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the satsang, we are meditating on the teachings of Bhagavan as delineated in Ramana Gita, recorded by Ganapati Muni. By Bhagavan's grace, we have completed 8th chapter, 8 chapters, and we are now going to commence the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is on the very significant subject. It's called Granthi Bedham, or cutting of the knot. It goes like this in the beginning. चतुर्दशेष्टमे रात्रौ महर्षिं पृष्टवानहं ग्रन्थिभेदं समुद्दिश्य विदुषां यत्र संशयः समाकर्ण्य मम प्रश्नं रमणो भगवान् ऋषिः ध्यात्वा दिव्येन भावेन किञ्चिदाह महामहाः शरीरस्यात्मनश्चापि सम्बन्धो ग्रन्थिरुच्यते सम्बन्धेनैव शारीरं भवति ज्ञानमात्मनः शरीरं जडमेतत् स्यात् आत्मा चैतन्यमिष्यते उभयोरपि सम्बन्धो विज्ञानेनानुमीयते चैतन्यच्छायया सृष्टं शरीरं तात चेष्टते निद्रादौ ग्रहणाभावात् ऊह्यते स्थानमात्मनः. So this is on Chaturdasheshtame Ratrau. He says 14th August at night. Chaturdashi, 14th August. So he asked Maharshim Prishtavanaham. I asked him the question on Granthi Bedam, about which scholars, even learned people, are having doubts. Granthi Bedam Samuddishya Vidusham Yatra Sanshayah. Even learned people have doubts on this topic. So if Bhagavan clears these doubts, it will be of help to all sadhakas, all learned people also. Then Bhagavan Muni says, clearly specifies this in many of his shlokas, the method by which Bhagavan would answer questions. Either he would always be silent initially after the question was asked, and look at the questioner with all that compassion flowing from him. Abhishekcha katakshena, he has said in 4th chapter. Here Muni says, Samakarnya mama prashnam Ramano Bhagavan Rishihi Dhyatva Divyena Bhavena Kinchidaha Mahamaha. After some time, having been in deep meditation, in Divya Bhava, in a divine mode, then he spoke. Then he says, Sharirasyaatmanaschapi sambandho granthirujyate. This is the definition. Sharirasyaatmanaschapi sambandho granthirujyate. We have this word, this definition of the granthi given to us Bhagavan later in Ulladu Narpadu. In Sanskrit also it is translated by Muni, Deho na janati sato na janma Deha pramaణonya udeti madhye Aham kriti granthi vibandha sukshma sharirocheto bhava jivanama. So it is called Aham kriti granthi there by Bhagavan. Jada udal naninadu satchitudiyadu udalalava nunrudikkum idayilidu chit jada granthi bandham jivanutpameyahandai ichamusaramenayen. There Bhagavan says all these namas, all these names pertain only to the granthi. But the simple definition of the granthi is Sam sharirasyaatmanaschapi, the link between the body and the Atma, and the self is called Granthi. It is called the bondage. And because of the link only, Sambandhenaiva Shariram Bhavati Jnanam Atmanaha. Because of this link only, the body becomes conscious. There is a consciousness that is permeating the body. One becomes aware of the body because of this link. It is called the link or the middleman or the granthi. And Bhagavan has explained, of course, as I said, in the 40 verses, he says that the body is insentient. There is no experience of I-ness in the body. Although we feel I am the body by itself is actually insentient. It does not have consciousness. Jada, it is Jada. In Upadeshasaram, Bhagavan will explain to us that all are Jada, even the mind is Jada. But here he is pointing out that the body has no consciousness of its own. That is why in deep sleep it is unaware of itself or its position. And Bhagavan has also said at the time of death, there is no awareness of the body. The body does not declare itself to be I, even at the time of death. It does not declare itself to be I, even when it is cremated. Bhagavan came upon this truth of the body being insentient right when he was 12 years old. When his father Sundaramayar passed away, Bhagavan understood this truth because he could see that the father's body was lying there as if asleep. There did not seem to be any difference in the father's state from his daily state of deep sleep. However, everyone was weeping. And then they carried the father's body to the cremation grounds. And they burnt the father's body and reduced it to ashes. So, Bhagavan meditated on this. And he thought to himself through inner analysis, if father had been the body, first of all, nobody would be weeping because the body is there. Secondly, if father had been the body, nobody would have burnt and reduced that body to ashes. Why would one burn down what is dear to us? The one who is dear to us, will we set flames to that person? We will not do it. Thirdly, the body also cannot bear the heat of the fire. It would say, don't burn me. But it did no such thing. It accepted the situation of being burnt and reduced to ashes because it had no say in the matter. It had no feelings about that. The body did not have any experience at all of being dead. So, if the body had been alive at some point only, it could say, I am dead. It was not alive. It was always Jada. But something made it sentient. Something made it appear to be conscious. And Bhagavan at that time, he arrived at the understanding, my father's I has left the body. My father's I has left his body, and my I is still in my body. That I is the Granthi. That I is the knot between the body and the self. Why do we say that I is a Granthi or a knot or a link? Why don't we say that I is the self itself? This Bhagavan explains to us in Ulladu Narpadu because he says the self is never born. Satchit udiyad, it does not rise or Na janma is translated. It does not born. That is, it never rises, says Bhagavan in Tamil. So chit udiyad. It never rises to say, I am born, I am so and so, etc. The self, in the self, there is no birth. It is unborn and eternal. And because there is no becoming, there is no rising up, there is no statement, none to say, I am so and so in the self. There is no division at all to make a verbal statement or have a thought experience about being I. In the self, there is no such division. So the self cannot be declaring itself to be conscious or declaring itself to be a body, a name, and a form. What is it that does so then? That's why Bhagavan says, Shariram jadametat syat Atma chaitanyamishyate. The body is totally insentient. And the self is pure consciousness. How can it be that the two have got linked unless there is something which is linking them? Ubhayorapi sambandho vijnanena anumiyate. We have to assume. Vijnana is we have to assume, we have to know, we have to infer. It's a scientific, logical inference that there must be something which is linking the self to the body, whereby the body appears to be conscious, although it is by nature insentient, although it is jada. How does it appear to be Chaitana? Because something which is Chaitanya is lending its power to the body, or the power has been borrowed by somebody else. We have borrowed the power from the self and we have cast it into the body or associated it with the body, identified it with the body. Therefore, this link has to be inferred, says Bhagavan. And the whole process of self enquiry is about this link only. Because Bhagavan again says, why should we infer that such a link is there? Chaitanyachayaya shlishtam shariram tata cheshtate nidradau grahana bhavat uhyate sthanamatmanah. Because there is in the body a sense of consciousness, which is a shadow of consciousness, says Bhagavan. Chayaya system. Chayaya. It is like a shadow of consciousness, and this is absent in deep sleep. It is absent when one is in swoon or unconscious. Therefore, we have to infer that it is there when one is awake. Uhyate. One has to infer, and one has to also infer a space or a sthanam for this granthi, for this knot, for this link. It is situated somewhere within the body. One understands or one infers or one logically arrives through analysis at the understanding that there is a granthi. Now, this is a the light which Bhagavan has thrown on the granthi is a very important aspect of Bhagavan's teachings, and it is crucial to our understanding of self-enquiry as well. Because when we say, who am I? When we ask ourselves, who am I? Which is the I about which we are asking? Which is the I we are trying to pay attention to? It is not to the self. because one cannot pay attention to the self. There are no two in the self. One can abide as the self. But in self-enquiry, when one is asking oneself, who am I? One is trying to put the attention on this granthi, on this middleman, on this link, which calls itself I. By focusing attention on this granthi, it dissolves because it is a granthi, it is a link. What is the nature of this knot? The nature of this knot is that it has the qualities of both the aspects which it is linking. It has a quality of insentience. It is jada. It is not of its own nature conscious, because only the self is Chaitanya, nothing else is Chaitanya. However, this link also has an element of consciousness in it. It is the element of consciousness, the chaya, the shadow of consciousness, or we can call it the scent of consciousness. This it takes and it superimposes it on the body. When one asks oneself, who am I? What happens is one cuts away its association with the body and tries to pay attention to it, minus its linkage with the body through the thoughts. When one cuts away this linkage, then what remains of it? The consciousness part alone remains. So it becomes a bridge back to consciousness. This very same link, which makes us assume a body awareness, a body consciousness, a body identity, that very same link can lead us back to the self. This is the beauty of Bhagavan's method of self-enquiry. So when we understand that this is a mixture of the two, and when we do the process of decantation, we remove all the association with the jada, then this I granthi, the granthi remains in its pure state, and that is called the Aham Spurana by Bhagavan. So the decantation is to get rid of the identity. How do we get rid of the identity? There are two ways to get rid of identity. One is to keep negating the identity. Say, I am not the body, I am not this, I am not that, I am not the mind. One can say, good, that helps us. But who says this? Bhagavan will say, who says I am not? That I is the granthi. So if I say I am not the body, I am saying that there is a granthi, there is an entity who has the capacity or the right to say this, and that entity is valid. However, when one asks oneself, who am I? One is not giving any validity to that entity. One is, say, first of all, cutting away everything that belongs to the I. Because when one does not even know who I am, then there is the question of assuming anything else about the body, whether it is this, whether about that I, we cannot assume anything else. Whether it's a body, whether it's a mind, we cannot assume anything. When one is asking, who am I? It takes us to the complete position of tentativeness, where every association of the I with jada is cut away. And when this is done repeatedly and with intensity, only the pure I thought or the subject thought, the I remains, and that automatically subsides into the pure consciousness, which is the self. This is the power of self-enquiry, and this is the beauty of Bhagavan's way, where he is pointing out to us the quality of the granthi, We will continue to meditate on the Granthi along with Bhagavan's answers in the coming weeks by his grace. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्निमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरम् चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि.
Namo Ramana Dileep.